Hi, everybody. Welcome to The New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, and today is June 14th, 2023. I want to first take a minute and say happy birthday to the best president ever, the most peaceful president, President Trump. Happy 77th birthday, and happy Flag Day to America, and happy birthday to the U.S. Army. So it was quite a day for us to all take a moment and be very proud of our country and the most peaceful president ever. So we'll be right back with Dr. McDaniel talking about the white box effect right after this. Be sure to list any comments or questions that you have in all caps in the live chat and leave us some comments below if you're watching this later. Be right back.
This lecture I want to share with people because I'll not forget years ago a elderly dentist from Arkansas called me because he had had about 5 major or significant healthcare challenges, and he was so happy because he had had each one of them slowly improve. This was the first time that this had happened where a person had multiple health challenges and they improved. But over a period of time, this occurred time and time again, and it began to form a profile that the most threatening to a person's health or even their life would be the first thing that would improve. And then it would slowly progress till the last thing. For example, jock itch or foot fungus or middle ear infections that were chronic, and dandruff would be the last things. They would be the most minor, like there's an internal intelligence to select which is the most serious to be addressed by the metabolism of the body, the healing and defense mechanisms to slowly progress from the worst to the least thing. So that's what we began to call the white box effect, because the FDA years ago developed a thing called the black box effect when they found out certain drugs had toxic side effects that were much worse than the general belief that in the standard toxicity testing when they did post-marketing surveys, that there were problems that they felt like that the patient should know about in advance. And so rather than the black box, we call this the white box effect. And there's a thing we'll get into before we're through about where in India they have millions living in abject poverty. And I was approached by a person from India after speaking to the United Nations Office for Food and Agriculture of Rome, made a presentation for them, and an individual came to me from India wanting to know if this could be tested in India, with the idea that they would expand it to the whole country if it worked out in a pilot project. And so now we'll start with the first slide on the white box effect. When we started out, I was giving you some background on what I call the white box phenomenon. Is that there are standard tests for toxicity that the FDA requires of all new potential drugs. And oftentimes they go through this, they want to know, to start out with, what they call LD50 and LD100. LD50 means what amount of this new potential drug is toxic enough to kill half the animals, and how much is required to kill 100% of the animals. And there needs to be a long window between 50 and 100%, or they won't allow you to go to the next step in new drug development, which is phase 2. And how this came to be in our thoughts is that in post-marketing monitoring, they find out when hundreds of thousands of people take this new drug that passed the initial toxicity testing, that they form strokes, heart attacks, damage to the kidneys, lung damage, bone marrow damage, suppression of the immune system, and very serious effects that they didn't detect with a few hundred patients. And they required a black box. Well, in these individuals that had multiple health challenges that they would step by step improve, we call this the white box effect. And so with that, we'll go to the second slide. I think we should recall at this time that the individual termed the father of Western pharmacology was named Paracelsus, the most noted person in world history from Switzerland. And his most famous statement was, all drugs are poisons. The benefit depends on the dose. And this fact remains true. And if you will watch the ads on television of all the new in-patent drugs, they will have colored and nice music and beautiful people about praising this new drug. Then all of a sudden they'll go to black and white and talk as fast as they can and start naming off the toxicity and the side effects, which sometimes are chilling to hear. But as I have said before, that in new drug development, they have the phase 1, which is the toxicity testing, where they want to know the amount of this potential new drug that kills half the test animals and how much to kill all of them. And it must be a wide window there, or they won't let you proceed to phase 2. And so we like the term, instead of black box, a white box effect. Now, in years ago, after the passage of 1994 of the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, which for short is called the SHAE, established the dietary supplement industry. And there became a wide amount of individuals consuming it. And we had a dentist from Arkansas that had 5 significant health challenges, and he called me to tell me how each one of them improved in a stepwise manner. And I began to kind of monitor from the thousands of people that were taking the new dietary supplements that this would happen time and time again. And the thing that shocked me was that the most serious life-threatening condition would be the first one that the body seemed to try to correct it and then proceed to the least life-threatening conditions. Very minor things, as I particularly remember that they no longer had dandruff problems as the last thing to get improved. But I wanted to point out that it's a long story how it developed to be invited, but for the United Nations Office for Food and Agriculture in Rome, Italy, they sponsored a conference in Bratislava in August of 2001, and I was asked to go there and present. And I took 2 scientific posters and also offered a approximately hour oral presentation at a university in Wroclavia, and the title was "A Modern Dietary Supplementation Provides Promise for an Economical and Effective Means to Improve the Health Status of Mass Populations." And as you might know, that the United Nations is responsible for the monitoring and making recommendations for approximately 100 countries. And out of this title, a bishop from the Indian Catholic Church, which has no relationship initially with the Church of Rome, came to my office not once but twice, and he had written a pamphlet about in India they have millions living in abject poverty, less than $1 a day for the individuals in a family. And this title attracted his attention. And pardon me. In his church, they had a clinic in in the southern part of India that wanted to institute a clinical study that we would take people in that were in poverty and have a series of laptop computers and take an inventory of all their health challenges, start them on the more effective dietary supplementation formula, and follow them periodically to see if just by improving their health, their nutrition, that their health would improve, and actually prove up in a clinical study the white box effect, which is just kind of an idea of what we'd observed, but it had never been tested in significant numbers of patients. And the idea was that not only would this be very safe, that it by supporting the engineering and design of life that is coded in the genes or the DNA that controls cellular synthesis, where nutrient molecules are assembled together to make compounds that run the biochemistry of life, that this would be the most economical approach for health management for India, because in his pamphlet he pointed out that that country does not have the resources whatsoever to build the medical schools, train the doctors and nurses, establish the clinics and hospitals, much less maintain them to provide an improvement in health for the millions that live in abject poverty. Well, unfortunately, even though he came here twice, he could not get the funds to do the pilot study to prove the white box effect in a large population study. So this still remains somewhat in the category of a theory rather than a major study has been done to prove the white box effect. And this tells you about this bishop from the church in India, that he was searching for something that was safe, effective, and economical, and that they had a clinic in Kerala, India, where they would test the white box effect. And if it was effective, his idea was to move to all the states in India. Unfortunately, he went to immigrants that had come to the United States and been quite financially successful to try to get them to donate to do this study, and he had no luck. And so then he went to the Arab immigrants, which if you followed their oil production income there, that the immigrants, royal families take care of the health care of the nation. And what he proposed to them is if they would finance this in India, that they would share all this information with them, and it would reduce their cost of taking care of the Middle Eastern population that they were responsible for. Well, they didn't come across either. And though he had 200 acres donated, that they would plant the aloe plantation, or the key ingredient in this the dietary formulation, which is acetylated mannose that's called Ace Manning. So that still remains to be done, and I'd still like to have the opportunity to do this. Now, this bishop that came was named Abraham Karnak, and he made this proposal for Kerala, India, and this is a picture of a product that grows on a tree in India, and he used as a example that he quoted as the Lord brought forth herbs from the ground, and no one sensible would despise their use. And he quoted this in a book of wisdom from India. Now, unfortunately, this huge population, they said about 40% of the population of India learns less than $1 a day, and this was the only approach that he knew of, and he learned about it by my presentation made for the United Nations, and that pharmaceuticals, or Western medicine, is notorious for its side effects, whereas the side effects from more comprehensive nutrition is people's hair grows faster and longer, their fingernails grow faster. Fact is, we've had reports from females in the United States that could never have a manicure because their fingernails just were so poor. But on more comprehensive nutrition, they were stronger and grew faster, and they were so pleased to be able to have manicures. And then those that were older said that there was regeneration from sun damage to their skin. So the plans to help with the population of India has gone nowhere, unfortunately, which is a common thing over and over again, that finding funds to do nutritional research is almost impossible. But this idea of more comprehensive nutrition being so beneficial, if you look into the writings of Hippocrates, who was 300 to 400 years before our calendar started. If you go to Google and enter sayings of Hippocrates that he's left us, he wrote, if we could provide to the individual the proper nutrition and exercise, comma, not too much, not too little, comma, we have provided the safest pathway to good health. And beneath this is wrote, let your food be your medicine your food. And it's very hard to get ahead of this sayings of Hippocrates before our calendar started. And that's one of the reasons I, time and time again, say that I have not developed or invented anything new, that I'm a messenger and a servant to try to get across to, unfortunately, our population is pharmaceutical drug oriented. And this is a unfortunate thing, because our people want prescription drugs or even illegal drugs to their detriment. And yet coded in our DNA is the information to use optimal nutrition to assemble bioactive molecules to run the biochemistry of life. And that's why this white box effect is a permutation of what Hippocrates noted before our calendar started. And time again, I have used the term from Hippocrates, let your food be your medicine and your medicine your food. And this is something that every citizen in our country should be aware of. And with this, you can reduce the healthcare cost of the individual and the family, or even a health group or a company where the premiums are high because with more intelligent choice of nutrients, you can reduce your healthcare costs while improving quality of life, which the white box effect is a step even further. And I put together for Kerala, India, a clinical protocol, and it's a large notebook, and we put in each one categories how this techno nutritional got started, and then how the biochemistry of how it works, how Alzheimer's patients have memory and cognition improve. And we put a copy of the paper and the mechanism of actions is there. And then we have 26 published papers of how brain function has been improved and the mechanism of action. And then we had a section in there about people that have malignancies such as leukemia, lymphoma, cancers, and sarcomas, why they have improved, and the pilot studies that have been done. And then the World Health Organization calls diabetes 2 primarily as a product from too much food, too much obesity promotes diabetes 2. And we have in this protocol the section that gives all the pilot studies. One was 281 retired Air Force employees that had type 2 diabetes and how it was improved. And you should be getting the idea of these different things here, that how seemingly inside the body there is a intelligence that these serious conditions will respond first, and then it progresses to, and I would say the last thing is the evidence that we're getting now that even more comprehensive nutrition adds more years of longevity with better quality of life if you take this improved nutrition on an ongoing basis. Then we have in this protocol for India major benefits for children, particularly a condition that is on our magazines, and you find it many places, the attention deficit disorder and ADHD, which causes so many children to be put in special education in the public thing. And that we had bipolar children, autistic children, and children with trisomy 21 or Down syndrome improve their brain function. Then there's another category of the autoimmune conditions, and the papers that we've got published that show the mechanism of action and the benefits that are attached to this protocol. And then not only of grade school and kindergarten, but even up to college level, there have been published studies of benefit for supporting improved brain function and making better grades. And this research started with antiviral activity back in the early 1980s. And we end with it that workplace absenteeism is reduced and that athletic performance is enhanced. And all the evidence that are attached to this protocol that supports these representations. And from this, you can determine that if you've got several of these, that the white box shows that the more serious will be I improve first down to the least important. And this is just an example of the index that attached to the back of the protocol for the clinic procedure, and how in each of these indexes we have the put the papers that have been published or the studies that have been done that support the different steps in the white box effect. Now, this you would have thought would attract funding, but as I pointed out, the bishop went to two different groups and didn't get anywhere with it. One of the things we attached to this was I had a visit to me from a physician from Moscow, Russia, that pointed out behind the Iron Curtain that the communists wanted all the human researchers to develop something that could be taken, that the performance intellectually and physically of Russian citizens would be so good that it would make people want to be communists with the Russians. And this person that came to see me said, if you could read 12, 13 different languages, I could bring you a truckload of research that was done behind the Iron Curtain during the period that there was poor communication between the Russians and the Americans. And a summary of this was done by a linguist that was also much into the biology, molecular biology of health. And it was published in the British Journal of Phytotherapy, which he brought me these copies in English that pointed out these benefits. So this potential study to be done in Kerala, India, and the proving up of the white box effect had been to some degree also parallel where they had no limits on the amount of money they had for their research about because what the Russians came up with, they call adaptogens rather than dietary supplements. And again, they were able to show exactly the type of thing we were seeing with the white box effect. Now, this is from the British Journal of Phytotherapy 31 to show you behind the Iron Curtain that they took their adaptogen formula and they put it in the morning tea break at the auto plant for military trucks. And they also had a tea break in the afternoon. And they had about 8 to 12 milligrams in the tea each time. And there was a 30% reduction in diseases of the people in this plant. And absenteeism was cut 61%. And this paper was published by one of their researchers, Galanova, in 1977. And in this graph, you can see in 1973 was their reference year, where they had percent of the workers sick during the year. It was nearly 42%. And the days absent was a total of 296. And then in 1974, they started putting their adaptogens, which is similar to our dietary supplements, in the tea breaks, morning and afternoon. You can see the drop in percent of workers sick and also days absent down to 1979, where they only had 2.7% of the workers sick versus 41.8% the reference year. And they only had the 11 days absent due to health challenges when they added what they called adaptogens, which were a herbal nutrient supplement, very similar to what we were going to put into the Kerala to prove up the white box effect. Now, they also had a question about why were these individuals able to come to work. And also they said, let's do motor transport drivers, because they were outside and inside the big assembly plant. And this is data on 13,096 drivers that they gave the same amount in the T of the morning and PM, just like those that were inside the enclosure for the truck factory. 1973 was the control year where they had no T in their brakes. And you can see they said, let's look at the three major types of disease or syndromes to try to determine why the percent of the workers were reduced and the days lost reduced. And you can see that influenza, they had 296 cases out of the 13,000, nearly 14, coming, well, let's just say roughly 13,000. And you can see 171 had days absence due to hypertension, and 282 days were due to the number one cause of death of males in developed countries, which is ischemic heart disease. Oftentimes it's angina is the number one symptom. And you can know in 1974, they started putting the adaptogens, which is the same as our supplements, how the flu, the hypertension, ischemic heart disease dropped all the way down to 1979, where the days lost were 11, 5, and 3 for influenza, hypertension, and disease. And I feel like this is excellent work behind the Iron Curtain to point out that the white box effect that we hope to do the study in India, in Kerala, that it would prove out to be with high numbers, move from theoretical to theorem that is proven to be a benefit. Now, they did basic science work behind the Iron Curtain, and they took mice and put them on a running belt and gave them no adaptogens, and they would collapse in 52 minutes. And if they gave, they estimated the amount of adaptogens to be similar to be what you would be getting into the T breaks, and they could go from 52 minutes to 72 minutes before they would collapse on the running belt. And that's a 38% improvement in performance. So then they took 100 humans that were Olympic competitors for the 3,000-meter race, and they gave them 5 milligrams per kilogram weight. And every runner in the 3,000-meter Olympic competitors, 100% of them broke their best times with the addition of the adaptogens added to their diet. And lo and behold, when they calculated it, it was a 38% increase in performance, just like the mice that got 38% performance. And I like to point out that when I was in medical school, there was a lot of contempt offered by the clinicians in the junior and senior years about the PhDs in their research done with mice, rats, rabbits, cats, dogs, and making essentially fun of them. They frequently would call them rat rubbers as an insult. However, the biochemistry, notice what I'm going to say, the biochemistry of all the animals in the animal kingdom, which includes humans, is very similar. And that's why the FDA and medicine has set up requirements of government standards to use animals to prove up the benefits for humans. And I mentioned to you basically that the Russian physician, Dr. Ben Trubashnik, came and spent about 2 days here. And one of his questions was, here we had unlimited rubles provided by the government. He said we had researchers across 13 time zones. He said, again, if you could read multiple languages, I could bring you a truckload of information. But he said to me, how in the world did just a handful of researchers here in Texas with the very limited funds come up with a products from plants that was superior to their adaptogen formula? And my response was, here in Texas, we have a saying, I'd a whole hell of a lot rather be lucky than smart. And who knows whether that was being too superficial, because time and time again, we had things happen that really raise the question, is there some power that is active to help us make benefits? That the thing, and the reason I say that our formulation, in the opinion of Dr. Trubashnik, was superior to the Russian formula, is that theirs was built around plant sterols as the principal ingredient from the plants, whereas our principal ingredient was built around carbohydrates from the aloe leaf gel. And as you may or may not know, that the sterols tend to give you a big boost, but if you continue them, you have a drop in performance and side effects that are negative. And so for their athletes, they had to tune when the event was going to be so that they would get them to their peak of their potential performance, how their performance, and then if they continued, it would drop off, whereas there was no drop off from the dietary supplements that we had developed in athletic performance, in not only at the Olympic and the World Cup and professional athletes, that they could continue taking it and they didn't have to, say, tune their metabolism to it. But I told you how they had the truck drivers inside a big building getting their tea breaks and their benefits that I showed you in the graph. Then they decided to go to the truck drivers that would be in and out of in other words, subject to the environment of being too hot and too cold and bad weather. And then they also did a study with smelter and mining workers. And since there's such an insult in that environment, that the truck drivers had 90% less influenza compared to the smelter workers and mining workers. But the mining workers that took the adaptogens also decreased their flu cases significantly. Now, this slide compares the Soviet adaptogen formula to the nutraceutical formula or dietary supplement formula developed by the research team at Carrington Laboratories. And if you'll notice, I've circled that the Soviet adaptogen formula was built primarily around plant sterols, which the adrenal glands use, much like prefabricated molecules, to turn into different hormones in the body. and that the glyconutrients were a less important thing. Whereas in our formula, the first thing in it, the main thing, was glyconutrients or carbohydrates. Then the phytonutrients from the fruits and vegetables that are plant matured and extracted that the genes call for. And so that was the main difference of why Dr. Trebashnik was puzzled by how our nutraceutical formula was more reliable or easier to use and did not require tuning, so to speak, for the event that the athlete was going to participate in. As I told you before, the bishop from India first went to very successful Indians that had migrated to the United States to try to get them to donate to do the study in Kerala. And then they turned him down. So then he went to the royal families in the Arab nations, and they turned him down. And so we're citing the Russian independent research that gives a lot of information to suggest that not only what we wanted to do would be successful, but for athletic performance, what we had was superior. And the dietary supplements built around the active ingredient in the aloe do not require you trying to set the time that the athlete is going to compete and build up to that point to not reach a point where they begin to drop in performance, because there's no drop in performance of the dietary supplements. Fact is, I have previously pointed out that I was shocked in London to have a young lady, I would say kind of bony in her 30s, that ran 100-mile races and marathons. That was her events. And that she eventually ran 7 marathons in 7 days. And rather than having overtraining or drop in her performance, the last day she ran a marathon was the best or shortest time she had ever done a marathon. There was no drop in performance. So that is pretty much the story of the white box effect that individuals can expect to have if they have multiple health challenges. But at this point, other than circumstantial evidence that we have had, and also the work that they did behind the Iron Curtain in Russia, points out that we expect that if we could do that study, it would be a benefit. But in this country, what one should recognize is that if you have a healthcare group at a company, that whatever their premiums are, if a high percentage of the people could get on more comprehensive nutrition supported by the plant phytochemicals led by the aloe vera, Ace Manning, that they'll have you can anticipate a better quality of life and reduced problems that cause you to take pharmaceuticals or have to go to a doctor or clinic or hospitalization. And this in time will decrease the ever increasing premiums for healthcare groups. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to focus on the story behind the white box effect and its benefits, that it can be valuable to any individual that starts to increase the supply of nutrients to support the engineering and design of life that is coded in the DNA to make the bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry of life. And this is something that any individual or family should take into account, that this can be a benefit. So that's the end of this lecture. And so with this, we will stop the.
Well, another great presentation. It's incredible that that even in Russia, that they were having those kind of results and seeing that kind of recovery of the body. And I think it's interesting that it starts with the most significant health concern or the most significant health deviation. It's like the body knows, like you said, the intelligent design, what to work on first.
Well, one of the things listening to this again, that I should have said, that we do not represent in any manner that we treat, cure, or ameliorate a disease, syndrome, or abnormal health condition. It's against the law, and in fact, the mode of action of nutrition is not treatment. All we do is just improve the supply of nutrients and turn it over to the genes. And there's an intelligence in the genes to make the compounds to move the biochemistry and the health and physiology to the normal zone, which the father of human physiology, Dr. Hans Selye, called homeostasis, or balance within the cells of all the organ systems. So all we do is just improve nutrition. We don't treat disease. And I was probably derelict not pointing this out. But one of the reasons I showed the Russian studies is that this would add to the belief that if we could do the study in Kerala for the white box effect, that it would be successful, because the Russians did a whole lot more with virtually unlimited funds. And anyone watching this should be thinking about, what does this mean to me? And what I can tell you what it means to you, that if you have a financial challenge personally, or your family does, about having to go to the doctor or the clinic or hospital or some type of chronic disease, that you have the capacity to work with supporting your own gene programs with more comprehensive nutrition and reducing healthcare costs while improving the quality of life. And that's not just idle activity. The World Health Organization, which I started out saying I did the lecture for in Bratislava, is responsible for monitoring the health of about 100 countries and making recommendations and all. And they point out that the United States, where most of us are present that are watching this, have the highest healthcare costs in the world. The last figures I have is it was about $10,300 per citizen per year, and rapidly increasing. When they did surveys of all the member nations of the United Nations, lo and behold, our United States came in number 35th. And one of the reasons is, in third world countries, if you eat, you plant the seed, you cultivate it, you harvest it, you allow it to mature on the plant so that the genes in the plant can put the nutrients so that your genes call for into the food, so that you can properly synthesize in cellular synthesis the bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry and physiology of life. And what you say, well, we have lots of food. Fact is, we have so much food in the United States that obesity is a problem, but it's not good, balanced nutrition. One of the things that finally hit me is when I was a kid in the 1940s, most of your groceries were run by and owned by a local family. and they had few things to sell that were more than 50 miles from the store. And there were multiple fruits and vegetables that you could only have about 4 to 6 weeks a year during the growing season locally. Well, what has changed? We have national market chains of groceries stores, and agribusiness follows the growth patterns across the country. And lo and behold, instead of only 4 to 6 weeks of certain vegetables, we can have watermelon 12 months of the year. We can have blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, blackberries 12 months of the year. How do they do this? They do it by harvesting when the fruit or vegetable is green so that it will have a shipping life and shelf life. And when you pick it green, the principal molecule in the produce is chlorophyll. Now, chlorophyll is a wonderful, marvelous molecule. It's involved in photosynthesis, but it is not one of the molecules that your genes call for in cellular synthesis to make bioactive compounds to run the normal biochemistry and physiology of life. So that's why so many people, when they take a dietary supplement, which is available, and New Eden is what I've been working on for 36 years to try to find molecules that are low or absent in the modern food chain. And people say, it's a miracle. Look what happened. I went months or even years taking different pharmaceuticals and it never did any good. And here, this nutrition corrected my problem. Well, it's because we use plant matured lyophilized. That's how you freeze it and you put it under a vacuum to take out all the water. And that stabilizes bioactive molecules that the genes call for in cellular synthesis to make the proper structure of the compounds that run the biochemistry of life. And so if you've got a financial challenge personally or your family, it's to me, it continues to be amazing at the benefits. And as I frequently tell people when they're hollering miracle, 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 it ain't no miracle. All it is restoring nutrient molecules that the genes call for that are not present in fresh fried franchise foods that so many people eat. And what they provide in the stores as fresh fruits and vegetables, unfortunately, they were picked green before the plant genes were able to put the nutrient molecules in there, because the genes of the plant only put the nutrient molecules in there when it's maturing on the plant. Well, they can't take those type of things because they will rot before they can get to the store. So they pick it green when it's hard as a rock for shipping life and same. But we can take that plant matured, rush it to the freeze dryer, make a powder, and put it into a dietary supplement, and it restores what your cells need to make the compounds to move everything to the normal area. So I hope that people realize that all this information that I was sharing about the white box effect is available to each individual. And in this presentation, I am holding up
There you go.
the protocol that I put together for India. And it's a big book. And in the first part of it, it gives the history of discovering personally the importance of nutrition and health of the individual. Then we have, I will open it up. You'll see that there is.
If you hold it in front of yourself, I think it'll show up.
Index with the papers at different points for these different conditions that slowly improve, or some even rapidly improve when you have more comprehensive nutrition. And the papers are in here supporting the protocol that we had for Kerala, which unfortunately we haven't been able to get the funds to do. However, the Russians did work that is very similar to, they call it adaptogens rather than dietary supplements. And you saw with the truck plant where they're inside an enclosure, the benefits. And then they said, let's go to drivers that are going in and out of the environment during the winter and the months. And then they even went to miners where there's even heavier insult, and got a reduction in the major health challenges that people face. And I might add that a small metal fabrication company that has several hundred employees in Iowa, that the owners recognized the potential benefits of this and made a deal with the employees that they would provide half the cost of improved nutrition if the employee would pay the other half. And in this group, with a health plan, they had a wife that had no response to a hepatitis, and she was on the waiting list to get a liver transplant. However, with this more improved nutrition, the elevated enzymes showing damage to the liver began to get better, and then went down virtually to normal. Wow. And finally, where she had been having to see an internist twice a week, he said, well, you're in such good shape now. We've taken you off the liver transplant list, and I'll see you in a year. Wow. Well, what was the financial impact of that? I found out that the insurance
almost $1 million. I mean, transplants are $250,000 or $750,000, and then the anti-rejection meds are anywhere from, I mean, can be 30 to 40 grand a year in the anti-rejection meds.
But that health group didn't have this. They have to, when they had a organ transplant, they have to charge the group for future healthcare costs up to $1 million before they die. And so the premiums have to be increased. Well, they didn't have to increase the premiums. Wow. But it may not be in a health group. You may just be your family finances. That more comprehensive nutrition that's available in the New Eden that we have available by web, you can put back into your diet. You restore to your diet the nutrient molecules that the genes call for. That was one of the first shocks that I had back in the early, I started in this in August 1985. And one of the first things that surprised me is that in the plant kingdom, the nutrient molecules are synthesized that our genes call for in all the animal kingdom. And of course, we're in that kingdom, beings, that they're in the plants. And one of the first things people will say, well, what about the fatty acids that are so low in plants? Well, if you'll eat walnuts and hemp seed and chia seed and other nuts, you will find the fatty acids that are needed, which oftentimes people that are vegetarians or vegans ignore. You need to have a very broad diet of not only fruits and vegetables, but berries and nuts to cover the ingredients that the genes call for to make bioactive compounds to run the normal biochemistry of life. And this decreases healthcare costs. And this is why organized medicine and science have rejected this so much, because you have the power within you to do this, and you don't need the expense of pharmaceuticals or going to the clinic or the hospital oftentimes, because you give your body what it needs to get to the normal zone. And in the background, we have this brick wall because it's artificial, because I think I've been hitting my head against a brick wall since 1985 because our population is so drug oriented. The belief, lay wise and professional wise, if you got a problem, physically, emotional, or mental, we got a drug for it. And of course, drugs, Paracelsus said all drugs are poisons. Benefit depends on the dose. They've got some benefits at times, but they got a black downside. And this is one of the wonderful benefits of more comprehensive nutrition. I think I mentioned in there, people tell us their hair gets thicker and more luxuriant. We even had bald-headed people started growing hair.
People with alopecia even were having their eyebrows restored, things like that, because of the nutrition coming back in their body and their body healing themselves. There were some really great
That's
great
true.
stories of that. And I've had some friends tell me some great positive things with their response of trying New Eden. I'm glad to have our family on New Eden and excited to see the health benefits of that. And I think it's interesting. There may even be things in your body that you're not aware of. When you're talking about this white box effect, you may have a condition that you're unaware of, a kind of a sleeper condition in your body that you're unaware of, that is correct, that your body can correct by having this, proper nutrition. I thought about, we watched a documentary recently about the nutrition in our food and how, Big Pharma has gotten into the food business in America specifically, but all over the world, and how there's this trend of obese children where they're hungry all the time. And a lot of it is because their body is craving nutrition. And so there's these fat but malnourished children in America, specifically, that they were talking about. And they talked about these kids that have they're obese, but they're eating all the time, but they're not getting the nutrition that they need. And I thought, man, if their parents just knew about something like this, and Cannon and I, my youngest and I, started making gummies. We use Jello and some sunflower lectin, and a gummy bear recipe off the website, off the internet. And we made some little gummy bears with our New Eden. And he makes them with, he uses double cherry and a limeade and makes his New Eden gummy bears with those. So it's a great product for kids and families. There is a link in the description for you to get your New Eden. If you sign up for a 6-month auto ship plan, which is what I recommend, you get a discount, as well as getting free box of probiotic, the Milagros probiotic, shipped to you once a month. And that is a great deal for your family and for your health. You can go to the website. You can also purchase Dr. McDaniel's book, The Gift. And when you place your order, they will ask you who referred you, and you have to choose somebody. So choose me, Lisa Davis. And you can also, it gives you an option for a little box where you can put in any notes or questions. If you have any deviations from health, they will send you information or research reports that they have. If they have any information that's similar to things that you have going on with your health. And Dr. McDaniel has generously offered his personal email to anybody if you have questions, or if you are inspired and have the funds to fund this research that he's speaking of that could help humanity and push this research forward. You can reach Dr. McDaniel at the email that we see on the screen there. So Dr. McDaniel, thank you again for joining us. These are always so informative, and I look forward to the day where we can bring this get this in front of more and more people. So you guys, if you're watching this right now, please give us a like, share the video, leave a comment for us, and share this with your friends and loved ones so that we can have more people with good nutrition and health.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share this information with others. I started out in the middle of the road science and medicine in 1985 and discovered the wonderful aspects of what has been provided for us in nature. My first book was, the title is The Gift of Primal Provision. And it kind of gives you the first 10 years of this research of discovering that in the plant kingdom are the molecules that our genes call for, and how they are low or missing in the modern food chain, and how you can find them in a dietary supplement, which what I've developed is called New Eden. And I hope that individuals will take advantage of reducing their personal and family healthcare costs while improving quality of life.
Thank you so much. We'll see you guys next time here on The New Normal. Take care.